Channel 2, канал другий для англійської мови.
Ja, das ist Sweden.
Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joins us in Ukraine Media Center Ukraine Forum. We continue our operation today, and it's year 9 of the war, and it's day 323 of the heroic resistance of the Ukrainian people. And now we will be talking about the situation in Luhansk region. Joining us in this studio is Serhii Haidai, the military governor of Luhansk region. Good afternoon, Mr. Serhii. Good afternoon. Mr. Serhii, let's start with the hottest spots in Luhansk. It's probably Kreminna and Svatova for today. What's going on there? We understand that you cannot disclose all the details, but from what you can tell us, what's the situation over there? I would rather unite the direction of Svatova Kreminna as one direction, but there are violent battles going on both sides from Kharkiv region, from what we mentioned, Svatova Kreminna, and on the side of Donetsk region, it's Bilogorivka, the settlement of Bilogorivka. Why we're saying the territory? Why I'm saying the territory of Bilogorivka? Because Bilogorivka is the settlement near Lysychansk, where one of the biggest scale operations was attempted by the Russians. They wanted to make a crossing of the river in Bilogorivka to create a platform in Bilogorivka. So they were doing it, they were attempting it twice, and they were won victored over twice. Of nearly 500 of enemy personnel were destroyed there, and after that they started destroying Bilogorivka with everyday shellings. They are being shelled on a daily basis. They're being bombed with aviation. They're being hit with rockets, cannon, artillery, MLRS, and everything. So settlement of Bilogorivka doesn't really exist anymore as a settlement. The violent battles are going on. There are defense forces. They hold their positions, and they improve them a little bit even, and they don't allow any offensive action by the Russian occupation forces. As to the direction of Svatova and Kreminna, the success is ours. Step by step they liberate Luhansk region. The deoccupation is gradually going on, and all the attempts of the to stop the offensive of our forces are unsuccessful on part of the enemy. Nothing changes, so our forces advance gradually. We should not expect any significant powerful breakthrough in that direction, because the Russian forces, they prepare the fortification structures and they mined all the territories. So every meter of land is Luhansk is being taken with very serious effort. Talking about the people who are civilians who end up under occupation, what's going on there? We understand now it's winter, the temperatures fall below zero. How is humanitarian situation there? Do people have minimal basic conditions? What's going on with heat supply, with water supply, power supply? Well, we can divide Luhansk region in 3 parts. One fraction was occupied back in 2014. Yet another part was occupied without powerful battles after the 24th of February, after the beginning of full-scale invasion. But there is also part of Luhansk region. We can draw a line from Kreminna, Rubizhne, Zolotohirske, and Lysychansk and Popasna. So this is where the warfare was active within 4.5 months. Some places like Bilogorivka and Popasna, they just ceased to exist as a result of permanent incessant shelling, incessant warfare. We had thousands of incoming projectiles, mortars, very powerful aviation bombs, all the critical infrastructure is destroyed to the ground. The water supply infrastructure is destroyed to the ground. The Popasna Canal infrastructure was water supply facilities were located near Belogorivka. All the pumps, compressors, water treatment facilities, everything is destroyed. Electric distribution substation were all destroyed. The substation in Kremina, one of the best and most powerful in Europe, one of the most modern and up-to-date. The substation of Kremina, once it was holding the whole load of the Luhansk region. Everything that is related to sewage and water supply, everything is destroyed. The occupiers tried to repair something, but it was mostly for their propaganda footage. We've seen them reconnect the gas supply and they were boasting in it. However, before the invasion, it was just regular utility things for every inhabitant of Luhansk region. So they just shoot the picture about what's beyond that picture after reconnection of the gas, because there was no thorough research of all the network. The houses, the residential buildings started exploding due to the damages of infrastructure in other sectors of network. So they were trying to reconnect the water supply, but there is no water supply to all the buildings. They preserved the drills, the drill wells. A lot of people actually died in summer. It was 32, 34 degrees above zero, and all those residues from the courses, they ended up in soil. So people who were drinking that water, they started falling sick. And as to the electric power supply, people started reconnecting the electric heaters, and the network cannot sustain that load without the substations. And we've seen even the separatist footage where they bring wood to the apartment blocks for heating. So the situation is really horrible. As to the rural areas, they get heated with stoves, with ovens, with furnaces. The only big issue, the only huge problem is that they don't procure wood for the people. So people sometimes they just go to the forest and they cut the trees, they chop the trees, cutting them and chopping them in small pieces, and the people get blown on the mines because the forests are heavily mined, very densely mined. According to your estimates, what is the number of people remaining in those areas? All over the Luhansk region that was under control of the Ukrainian government, the official figure was 650,000 people plus 200,000 internally displaced persons. However, out of those 200,000 registered, it was only 75,000 residing there in fact. So I can say that before the active warfare, there was 720 people residing, 20,000 people residing in those areas, out of which around 200,000 left. Part of them left to Russia, part of them left abroad, some of them left to the safer areas in Ukraine. And now you know, we have such a saying that Luhansk region is everywhere now, because there are internally displaced people from Luhansk region everywhere, all across Ukraine. So what's the situation with our people living in Luhansk region? Is the situation the same as in Zaporizhia region, where the check post of Vasilievka is blocked and only 4 people were able to left? Yes, the inhabitants of the occupied part of Luhansk region were allowed to leave to Kharkiv region after our blitzkrieg. Through the dam they were able to leave. Now they don't have this option. Second, as you mentioned, is Zaporizhia, but it's suspended currently by the Russian occupation forces, and the people can also leave through Russian Federation. However, the problem is as follows: there are filtration camps there. People are being detained there for days, for weeks. The men are not being let out at all. The only way for a man, for a male, to live over a male of a draft age, it's only a bribe, and those bribes are pretty big. So women who were coming to their settlements to see what's going on with their dwellings, with their houses, they said they were kept in the cellars for days because the occupiers are very concerned about the ability of the local population to communicate the information about their ammunition silos to Ukrainian armed forces. So the only way is through Russia, but A, it's dangerous, and B, it's very expensive because it takes about 3 days if you count the price of all the tickets across Russia to European countries, and then further on through European countries to Ukraine is 300 to 400 euro. Not everybody can afford it. You mentioned the filtration camps. Let's talk about this a little bit. We know about those deoccupied cities. We've seen those horrors, the tortures that were going on there, what the occupiers were doing to our people. We've seen the consequences. So what's going on in occupied Luhansk region? Maybe you have information from the local citizens, from local population who were mentioning any details about these torture rooms, what's going on in those filtration camps. Well, we have to divide, we have to segregate filtration camps and torture sites. So the filtration camps are in the border of Luhansk region and Russian Federation. Well, it's surprising if they recognize that area as the part of Russian Federation. So why the borders? Why the customs? Why the filtration camps? So they check the information in the gadgets. They check their connections. They take their phones away from the people. They download the information that was deleted. There are some specially trained people, maybe the servicemen of FSB, but they very thoroughly check every single individual, not even males but females of any age, elders, everybody. As to the torture sites, unfortunately we have information about such, so to say, institutions in Luhansk regions, and people, and the people who get there, they say that not even in horror movies they've seen something that's happening there in such torture sites to both males and females. And we had information when during the active warfare there were battles for Rubizhne. Now there is such information from Starobilsk community. I can generalize it. I can say we've seen the consequences. We've seen those torture rooms in Izum, Bucha, Irpin, in different regions of Ukraine. Unfortunately, we are about to see things like those in Luhansk region as well. The regions are different in Ukraine, but Russian occupiers are the same everywhere. As to the forced mobilization that we know was very active in occupied territories, is it still going on? But maybe there is already no one left to mobilize. Well, the mobilization started way before the 24th of February, and it was announced by the proxy governor of Luhansk region, and it was still going on after the 24th of February. It was under patriotic slogans that we will liberate all the territories, now we're gonna reach Kyiv or maybe even Lviv, and the Russian world is wonderful. That phase is over. Well, it did because it expired. It stopped working. So there was another phase of financial motivation. There were announcements like you can make some money, and people who want some easy money, please go to army and you'll make a killing there. Then we've seen the evolution of this process when the people were persuaded by in other manner. For example, there was an announcement that there are drivers required with the high salaries, so people were going to that job and they were handed the draft notice and they were enlisted in the occupation forces. And there was also this pseudo referendum where the armed people were walking around the houses and they were handing those draft notices to all the males. And there are now a lot of checkposts in Luhansk region, so every car that passes, if there is a male in that car, such male can be handed the draft notice. So that they say it's now a females people's republic. So, and they don't actually they don't even pull the corpses from the battlefield, not to create tension first of all, and then not to pay out the premiums that they were promising. How active is the resistance movement in Luhansk, and how efficient is it? I think it is efficient, and yes, it is active in Luhansk region. Because some might say, you know, there are some easy things like for example, the throwing around the documents about collaboration is, or about the draft or pseudo referendum, but it's all lethally dangerous. Even posting a sheet of paper in the tree, or God forbid, if God forbid a person is being caught with such a leaflet of liar, in the best case the person will be exchanged as a prisoner of war later. But then we've seen somehow some collaborationist cars exploding. We've seen videos of somebody setting the occupiers' headquarters on fire. We've seen the railways blown up. We've seen the electric distribution cubicles set on fire in the railways. So the guerrilla movement works efficiently and very actively. People help us a lot in our fight against occupiers. Thank you for this information, dear colleagues. Your questions, if any, please introduce yourself. Good afternoon, Olga Opanasenko, Ukrinform. Could you please tell us, just a couple of days ago, there was information about the disappearance of 2 British volunteers in Donetsk region. Do foreign humanitarian volunteers work in Luhansk region, and what are the figures and how their security is being ensured? Thank you for your question. We know, I think, all the volunteers except for those who occasionally or just right here, right now, they decided to come to our area. It's not so easy to do so because even in the deoccupied parts of areas there are still shellings, so it's lethally dangerous. So only those volunteers whom we know, they come to those areas. There are no foreigners, but foreigners used to work with us as well. And now in Luhansk region, there are only our volunteers working in a steady manner. As to the security component, you cannot ensure overall security because look, the number of people currently residing in recently deoccupied settlement of Nevsky is 146 people. In other settlements, it's like 20 or 30 people. Sometimes it's only 4 people living in the whole village. You cannot ensure any security because, say, we come there and there is a projectile incoming. It may be a heavy artillery caliber 152 millimeters, very dangerous, which is deadly even for the light armored vehicles. And for example, S-300 rocket, how can you get protected against that rocket? When it explodes, there is a like 5 to 6 meter deep hole in the ground with a diameter of 10 meters with the thousands of shrapnel. So we cannot talk about any security there. Talking to our volunteers, their cars, their vehicles or wheels, they're just expendables. They're just consumables. Even us, when we come back from those occupied areas, -1 wheel is considered to be lucky because there's shrapnel everywhere, there are mines everywhere. It's just unreal. So the security component is something that we cannot talk about now. On contrary, we can say that every volunteer who brought some humanitarian cargo at least once or at least evacuated somebody, each such volunteer is a hero, because every person that comes to that area risk their lives. Any more questions, friends? Well, now that we don't have any more questions in our studio, I want to thank you for joining us in this studio. I'm reminding you, joining us was Serhii Haidai, the military governor of Luhansk region. Thank you, dear colleagues. We're preparing a schedule of events for tomorrow, so bear with us and trust in our armed forces. Follow our announcements. Glory to Ukraine.